I am here with the ST5 Pinion from Stromer. This is a super high-tech commuter e-bike with tons of premium features and a lot of touring potential. So is this bike worth its $12,000 price tag? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report. My name is John. I've got a couple quick requests before we jump in. So first, if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. We're known for our extremely detailed reviews and standardized testing methods. So if you're in the market for an e-bike, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can help you find the best bike for you. Second, our testing takes a lot of time and effort, so if you end up making a purchase, please be sure to use our affiliate link in the video description, as it helps to support us, but it does not increase your cost. But enough of that, let's get on to the good stuff. This is going to be a long one, so let's run through a few highlights about the bike and then go over its specs before we move on to our test sections a little bit later. First things first, the ST5 has an incredibly dialed-in ride. I thought it was super comfortable to start, and it has a custom 750 watt Sino Sport rear hub motor with a torque sensor, so it felt really natural to pedal at the low assist levels, but incredibly powerful and speedy at the highest ones. Now, I know some of you might be surprised that such a high-end bike uses a rear hub instead of a mid-drive, but this setup makes a lot of sense for a few reasons. This version of the ST5 includes a 9-speed C1.9 pinion gearbox that's essentially like a transmission on a car. And that system is mounted right at the bottom bracket where a mid-drive would otherwise be, so the rear hub is an essential component. But also, this motor is a gearless or direct drive motor, so it's essentially silent and it offers regenerative braking for when you're going downhill, so that makes this bike capable of long-distance touring. One last thing about the motor, and you'll have to trust me on this until we get into our test data, but this is without a doubt one of the smoothest and most natural feeling bikes I've ever tested, and some of the downsides that usually come with this type of motor just don't apply here. But let's keep things moving. The bike's tires were another big element of the ride, and I honestly never thought I'd get attached to a couple chunks of rubber. These are 27.5 inch by 2.4 inch Pirelli Angel ST tires, and they have really awesome stability and really great traction, and they also added quite a bit of cushion to the ride. The last major thing I want to hit is just all the top tier tech packed into this bike. I mentioned the Pinion gearbox, but that's paired to the rear hub with a Gates carbon belt. And the combination of those things is extremely durable and super low maintenance. There are two regenerative braking modes, a manual one called Recoup and an automatic one called Cruise Control. The bike includes a SIM card for GPS tracking using the Swisscom network in Europe and any 4G providers here in the US. The bike also has a security system with an alarm that literally locks up the motor to prevent someone from riding off of the bike. There's a touchscreen display integrated into the down tube, and the bike can also be paired to the Stromer Omni app, so your phone can be used as a secondary display using the SP Connect mount on the stem. There are also a boatload of customization options that we'll talk more in detail about later in the review. So that's a lot of stuff already, but let's finish off the specs and components. Pretty much everything on this bike has some kind of premium touch. So there's a huge 48 volt, 983 watt hour battery in the down tube that can be ejected with the press of a button. The bike is compatible with a couple of smaller capacity batteries as well, in case you want to pick up an extra. And it includes a fast 3.7 amp charger with a magnetic attachment to fill up the standard battery in about 5.5 hours. There's a custom set of 4-piston TRP hydraulic disc brakes with 203mm rotors on both wheels and an anti-lock braking system from Blue Brake on the front. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our brake test section later in the review, but the bike's standard setup here is a fully rigid frame. You'll see that we have an optional Connect active suspension seat post on this test bike, and we measured 65mm of travel with that. And you also have the option to add an inverted suspension fork up front that has 30mm of travel, and that's made in partnership with Ren Sports. The bike has custom fenders with an integrated license plate holder and an LED tail light with brake light functionality. There's a rear cargo rack that can hold up to 50 pounds. The bike includes a super nice Ergon SMC40 saddle. There's a U-shaped series of LED running lights in the head tube, and then a separate, huge, and super bright LED headlights with both high and low beams. Up in the cockpit, things are fairly straightforward. The bike has a custom stem and handlebar unit with a mounting point for the SP Connect receptacle. The flat handlebars themselves are 690 millimeters wide with Brooks cambium ergonomic rubber grips. A small control panel sits on the left handlebar with buttons to adjust your assist level or braking strength, as well as to switch between the headlight modes. There's also an electronic horn and a left side mirror that I found super useful on my morning commutes. And then the shift levers for the pinion system are on the right handlebar. And a few last things to run through. The ST5 is not currently UL certified, but our contact said to expect certification by the end of the year. The bike weighs 75.5 pounds with the battery installed and about 65 with that removed. This Imperial red color is the only one available in the US at the time of filming, but there's another called Aventurine green that is currently available in Europe, and that should be available here in the US at the beginning of June. And then on top of all of that, the bike even makes sounds when you turn it on and off, when it reaches a full charge, and when you eject the battery, along with some other instances. We were just totally blown away by everything that's included here. But with all that covered, let's check out how the ST5 Pinion performed when we put it through its paces in our testing. Starting off with our brake test, our tester Griffin measured the distance the bike took to stop after he pedaled it up to 20 miles per hour and then hit the brakes. The ST5's average stopping distance after 3 of these tests was 23 feet and 1 inch. So that was exactly a foot longer than average when compared to all the other commuters we've tested with hydraulic disc brakes, but I'd say it did a great job. Keep in mind that it weighs 75 plus pounds, so any brake system is gonna have to put in some work when stopping it, and this bike has an excellent setup. 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes with 203 millimeter rotors are about as good as you'll find, and these are made by TRP specifically for Stromer. I'd say the bike's tires also affected its performance in this test a bit, as it did skate and fishtail a little when we really laid into the brakes. That's just a natural side effect of a slicker tire, and honestly, I think you'd have a hard time finding a similar tire with better grip. These things stuck to the road like nobody's business. I do want to take a second to expand on the anti-lock brake system. So it requires activation every time the bike starts up by just riding normally and applying the brakes once. And then it uses sensors to monitor the wheel speed, and then it automatically adjusts the pressure of the brake pads on the rotors if conditions become unsafe. So there's sort of a popping sound that happens. This system is designed to prevent the front wheel from locking up and the rear wheel from lifting, which could then send you over the handlebars. We could definitely feel and hear it working during this test, and while it's possible that the bike could have stopped faster without the ABS system, we think the added safety factor is a fair trade-off. Anti-lock brakes are pretty new when it comes to e-bikes, so it was super exciting to get a feel for them on such a decked out bike. But all of that is to say that we think the ST5 Pinion is definitely spec'd appropriately with safe and effective brakes. The ST5 Pinion is a Class 3 e-bike, or a speed pedelec, as they say across the pond, so it has a top speed of 28 miles per hour right out of the box. I took it out to the bike path to check out the 4 pedal assist settings, so let's see what happened and then we can go over the results. All right, let's do a speed test here on the Stromer ST5. Start things off with no pedal assist, and I am going kind of right around 12, between 12 and 12 and a half miles per hour. Actually, I'm at 12 and a half now, so I'll read off the numbers since I don't know if you're going to be able to see the display and the down tube there. 12.6 is the max. 12.7. Okay, let's go ahead and go up to BAS1 before that changes again. Picking up some speed, but the pedal feel doesn't really seem any different. So I'm shifting with that pinion system, the electronic shifting, super snappy, super quick. And let's see. Going around 17.5 miles per hour, 17.7 in PAS1 here. All right, let's go ahead and go up to PAS2 or mode 2. There again, doesn't really feel a whole lot different, but starting to pick up some more speed. Go ahead and shift. We're going up to about 19 here, climbing a little bit more. Again, just a very natural, smooth feel here. Looks like about 19.4 is the max. Let's go ahead and go up to mode 3. This thing feels like it's really starting to rip. We got another couple miles per hour. Shift up again. Oh yeah. So 22.6 looks like about the max. And let's finish things off in sport mode. Holy smokes, okay. That's got some power. I'm just like effortlessly flying at this point. So shift up again. You can shift under load with this system, which is great. I'm up to 28 and a little bit higher. I think 28.3 was the max. So let's call that our speed test and go chat about those results. All right, I want to do a little acceleration test here on the ST5 Pinion. So I'm up into 5th gear. I'm going to go ahead and come to a stop so you can hear the downshifting, the automatic downshifting. All right, so now we are in 3rd gear, which is the default starting gear, and I found that's pretty functional, so I did not ever change that. But let's go ahead and bump up into sport mode, and we'll see how fast this thing can rip. So let's go in 3, 2, 1, go. And of course, super quick and snappy shifting. We are up to 26 and climbing, and over 30 miles an hour. All right, we'll call it there. The ST5's motor output and speed can both vary depending on how much pressure you put on the pedals, so it responds a lot like an analog bike. It was really important that I kept my level of effort consistent throughout this test so that I could get accurate readings. To recap those results, I pedaled pretty comfortably up to 12.7 miles per hour with no pedal assist, and even the lowest assist level made a really big difference in speed. In mode 1, I hit 17.7 miles per hour. In mode 2, that went up to 19.4, then 22.6 miles per hour in mode 3, and in sport mode, I hit 28.3 in the formal test, but I had the bike a little over 30 miles per hour in some separate testing with a little extra effort. If we look at our data from this test in a graph, it shows a pattern of exponential growth, so the power differences between settings get larger with every step up. I'd say that this made sense with the bike's feel, and I think it worked really well for what this bike is, even though we usually prefer more evenly balanced power levels. In modes 1 and 2, I felt like I was on a regular bike, but I was moving a lot faster. Mode 3 definitely kicked things up, but sport mode was a whole different level. I've never actually been in a Lamborghini, but I'd expected to have a pretty similar feel. There were times with the ST5 that I couldn't believe how quickly I got up to 25 or 30 miles an hour, and it was hard to believe the bike was moving that fast. I think the ST5 would do well with a throttle, but that's about the only super picky and very minor point of critique that I have for this section. Bottom line, this bike has a super dialed in feel, so it made me feel strong instead of the motor itself taking over the ride. For our range test, we took the ST5 out to the bike paths and rode it in sport mode until the battery was fully drained. We did the same thing in mode 1, so we could get both a minimum and maximum range, and we got a super impressive bracket of 40.9 to 93.6 miles from a single charge. It's gonna be a little tough to compare these results to similar bikes just because the ST5 is kind of in a league of its own. Most of the bikes we've tested with rear hub motors were priced far lower and didn't have so many premium features, so they're kind of apples and oranges. On the other hand, bikes in a similar price range often have mid-drives, but those tend to be more efficient and also don't look as powerful on paper because they amplify rider effort instead of adding to it. But let's look at both sides to try to get the whole picture. The 93.6 mile result we measured in Mode 1 is currently the longest distance we've seen from any commuter with a rear hub motor, and the ST5 was also the fastest of those that we tested in its low power mode. But even if we whittle down our comparison to only high-end bikes with mid-drives that we've tested, the ST5 still has almost all of them beat. This bike gave us about 65% more time and mileage than we expected in our high power test, meaning that it has a really efficient motor and battery. The torque sensor likely helped quite a bit, but the main reason it did so well overall is just that it has one of the highest battery capacities we've ever seen from a single power source. 983 watt hours is absolutely huge, so the ST5 just had plenty of fuel to keep it moving longer. We didn't quite meet Stromer's advertised range of 110 miles, but let's be real, anything approaching 100 is pretty insane. So with that kind of range, the ST5 will give you a solid few days of travel if you have a super long commute, but it also opens up a lot of touring potential, which gets even better with that regenerative braking system, which I'll share a demo of shortly. Next up is our hill test at the infamous Hellhole Trail, which is a 1/3 of a mile climb with an average grade of 12%. Let's go see what happened when our tester Justin pedaled the ST5 Pinion in sport mode.
All right, we're at Hellhole on one of my most anticipated hill tests that I've done. This is the Stromer ST5, the pedal test. This bike is like decked out to the nines and is just, it's known to be incredibly fast. So we're gonna see how it does. So far it feels pretty powerful, right around 13 miles an hour. I'm in sport mode. Has like pinion gearbox so I can shift. I'm gonna let you listen really quick, because this thing is dead silent. So yeah, I got down to just about 13.7 there. And as you can see, I can't even hear the motor. Literally at all, that rear hub. It's a rear hub, but it feels remarkably smooth, efficient, powerful. Yeah, we're gonna go to the tape and see how this does, but climbing was a joy on this thing.
So I think you could hear in Justin's voice just how much he enjoyed that test, and that's definitely saying something considering how difficult Hellhole is. He finished the test with the ST5 in 1 minute and 11 seconds with an average speed of 15.3 miles per hour. Once again, comparison is fairly tough. Most of the bikes we've tested that compare in terms of price use those mid-drive motors that we talked about, but mid-drives don't typically have the fastest climbing times. So for a broad comparison, the average pedal time for all the e-bikes we've tested with 750 watt rear hubs is 1 minute and 18 seconds. So the ST5 came out on top there. And then our current average for all commuters is currently 1 minute and 25 seconds. So it looks even better. Ultimately, these results were way better than we expected based on the ST5's motor specs. This is a direct drive motor that's only able to produce 48 Newton meters of torque, and our contact told us that it doesn't peak above 750 watts here in the US. There's clearly some kind of secret sauce that's coming into play, and we might not know exactly what that is, but we know that it means you won't have to put in much effort when it comes to climbing hills. I do want to mention that Stromer recommends limited use of sport mode when climbing hills, as it does have a tendency to heat up the motor. I noticed that the bike would go into a protective cooldown mode if I pushed it too far, so that kicked the power level down to mode 3 temporarily, but that setting still had plenty of power for even some really tough hills. Bottom line, this bike has it where it counts, and as Justin pointed out, it's also incredibly quiet. All right, so I want to walk you through the user interface for the ST5 Pinion. So this is sort of the home page of the display that shows that we are connected to a 4G network. It shows the indicator for the lights. So we have the low beam and high beam setting. We have a speedometer. We have an indicator for the current gear for the Pinion system. You have your battery charge and then your pedal assist level, so 1, 2, 3 in sport. but then the button for the interface is on the underside of the down tube, or top tube, sorry. So if I hit that, that goes to sort of the main options panel. You can turn the bike off, you can lock the bike, you can eject your battery, you can go to the move setting, which is like a walk mode. You can directly change the sensitivity of the torque sensor here. You can also access that from elsewhere in the display. So we'll dive into the deeper settings so that this menu button here opens up a much more detailed menu. So if we go to the bike option, we have the strength of the automatic braking system that you can change. You have your two options for the regenerative braking. We have it set to the cruise control mode, but you also have the recoup mode. We have an option to change the amount of pressure, required on the pedals to deactivate the regenerative braking function. And then we have the increments that the cruise control mode increases or decreases that sort of set braking limit. So then we have the torque sensor sensitivity and calibration in this mode. And if we back out of that, you have your adjustment for the smart shift system on the Pinion gearbox. So you can change the starting gear, so that is what it automatically downshifts to when you come to a stop. I've found that 3 works just fine. That was the standard setting. And then you also have the behavior of the shift levers. So I found that inverse worked better for me. You also have essentially a summary of all your ride data for your current trip, and then also over the lifetime of the bike. You can reset your trip computer. We have another option for pairing to the Omni app. And then we have some data for when your next service will be, how many miles you have to go, or what date that'll be on. And then if we back out to, this is again that main panel, so we have the Bluetooth options. I'll have to enter my PIN to get into that. And then of course you have connection with the Omni app. You can turn that on and off. You can see what devices are paired to that. You have the smart lock function. So if the bike is turned on and it's locked and you have the app open, you can walk up to the bike and it will unlock automatically. And that's all stuff you can change in the app. And then Stromer actually offers an advanced helmet that pairs to this through Bluetooth as well. Actually, I think they have 2 models if I remember correctly. But then in the settings menu, you can change your PIN, the language, the units, the battery, whether that is shown as percentage or remaining range. You have the time, so that's either 12 or 24 hours. You have the background, which is either a light or dark mode, but it has an automatic sensor for that as well. You can change your brightness. You can change the volume of all the sounds the bike makes. On startup, you can change whether or not that is locked or unlocked automatically. Right now we have it set to locked. And then the alarm function, you can either activate or deactivate that. And then backing out to the settings menu. Oh, I'm sorry, that's where we were. Going back to the system menu, rather. This is the last thing, and this is really just going to be stuff that like a mechanic would look at. But that really wraps up there. Let's go back to the studio and finish things off.
Hopefully it's pretty clear that the ST5 Pinion's ride quality is exceptional, but I want to break that down and look at all the individual features that add up together so I can really drive that point home. Let's take the bike back out and talk about the basics, and we can meet back up here to go a little bit deeper.
All right, we are here at the beautiful Snow Canyon State Park with the ST5 Pinion, doing something a little bit different for our ride quality talk here. So actually the first thing I'm going to do is set the cruise control mode, which is one of the 2 options for the regenerative braking on this bike. So I'm just going to hold the minus button to do that. And so that's going to set a speed limit that the motor will brake the bike down to. And you can adjust that with the plus and minus buttons. This is about a 4-mile road that's pretty much entirely downhill. So we'll see what kind of battery power we can recover. I believe the bike was at around 54% when we started, but if we look at the Stromer Omni app, that has an energy bar that shows that we are recovering energy now. So I'm gonna slow us down a little bit just to reduce some wind noise. There we go. But let's kind of rewind and talk about the basics of ride quality on this bike. So it is a sort of commuter slash touring e-bike, and it has, I'd say, a moderate forward lean to the riding position. On other bikes, I feel like the riding position might feel more aggressive than it does on this bike. It honestly feels pretty relaxed, even though I do have my arms pretty outstretched and I'm putting some weight on the handlebars. It's very comfortable. There are 3 frame sizes for this bike: a medium, a large, and an extra large. And I'm kind of right in the middle of the fit range for the large frame that we are on right now. So it feels super dialed in, extremely precise, very comfortable. The range for all 3 frame sizes is a little bit vague. It's listed as essentially under 5'9" to over 6'2". So judging by the geometry chart, we think that maybe around 5'5" to 6'6" is a pretty reasonable range for all 3 sizes. And there's a little bit of overlap between the ranges of each, about an inch or so. But anyway, with this bike, you are fairly limited to just the saddle height and the seat post length, and also the position of the saddle on the rails. When it comes to adjustment, there's sort of a single piece stem handlebar unit, a custom setup here, that means that you're pretty much locked in when it comes to that side of things. But to keep moving, we'll talk about the suspension. The bike does not come standard with any sort of suspension, but there are options to add a suspension seat post and or a suspension fork up front. So our test bike has the Connect suspension seat post, and definitely have been enjoying that. Very comfortable. I have not really missed a front fork though, to be honest. I think that the tires do a lot of work in absorbing bumps and vibrations. These tires are great. They're actually made by Pirelli. They are 27.5 inch by 2.4 inch, and they're sort of a slick street tread, very gummy, a lot of good traction for paved surfaces, a lot of great stability, and then of course adds a layer of cushion as well. And then the motor here is that 750 watt rear hub with a torque sensor. And I gotta say, the pedal assist just feels awesome. Most rear hubs, you know, you have a very definite sense of being pushed from behind, and I don't feel that as much on this bike. It's very smooth, it's very natural. Of course, that depends a little bit on the pedal assist level, but in the lower settings, for sure, it feels a lot like an analog bike, and you know, very good engagement. And then in the higher power modes, it just rips. This thing is super fast. But let's, I guess, keep moving and talk a little bit about some of the high-tech features on the bike. So first off, there's the Pinion gearbox. That is the C1.9 model with a smart shift module. So it has electronic shifting. Well, I guess let's back up. So the gearbox itself is a sealed, essentially, transmission system that replaces what would normally be a cassette on the back. So that is tied in with the motor through a Gates carbon belt. So again, you get electronic shifting there. The smart shift module allows you to that downshifts automatically for you. But the gearbox itself allows you to shift under load, so when you're going uphill, if you're putting a lot of pressure on the pedals, and also when you're stopped. And then the whole unit, the whole system with that Gates carbon belt is just incredibly low maintenance. All you have to do for the gearbox is essentially change the oil either once a year or after 6,200 miles, whichever comes first. So that's quite a good deal. And then the carbon belt is rated to last twice as long as a chain. and it has an automatic tension system, so it's never going to get loose on you. It is recommended, of course, to keep that system clean, free of dust and dirt and debris, but otherwise, you know, you don't have to worry as much about wear either. And then, of course, we have those regenerative braking modes. We have an anti-lock brake system that we talked a little bit about with the brake test section. We have a security system on this bike, and we have a whole lot of customization options that include the sensitivity of the torque sensor, the behavior of the shifting, the automatic braking system, the motor tuning, all kinds of other stuff. There's just so much packed into this bike, it's kind of amazing. I do want to talk separately about the interface and the Stromer Omni app. So I think I'm just going to keep the camera rolling here. If you want to skip ahead, feel free, but otherwise enjoy the views. It's a beautiful morning out here in a beautiful park. Oh, and then yeah, you know what, actually, as we get up here, I am going to turn the cruise control system off and we'll see how much charge we recovered. So let me shift up a little bit. So if you apply some pressure to the pedals, it'll automatically turn that off. That's another thing that you can adjust. And we're up to 55%, so I think we got about 1% or 2% of battery charge. So not a lot, but I mean, that's an awesome feature. It'll keep you going. I actually came through this park over the weekend, and I was getting pretty low on charge, but the amount of power that I recovered allowed me to stay out and run some errands. I was starting to sweat a little bit, wondering if I'd have time, but you know, that extra power allowed me to stay out. I didn't have to go right home, and that's what it's good for. So super cool system. Again, lots of awesome features. But I'll shut up now and we'll just take a ride. Morning. Doesn't get much better than this. Well, that kind of wraps things up here. I'll call it at this point, and I'll see you back at the studio.
I hope you enjoyed that ride through Snow Canyon. That was the best place we could think of to show off that regenerative braking system. There's still a little more to cover though. There are so many customization options on this bike, and to walk you through that, let's take the bike out one last time. We'll go through all the features of the Stromer Omni app, and then dive in a little bit deeper into the user interface of the bike itself.
All right, so I wanted to do a quick walkthrough of the Stromer Omni app. Let's go ahead and open that up. So this is the landing page that we're looking at right now. It shows you the bike that you're paired to. It shows the lock status. It has a readout for your battery level and your current trip setting, or distance rather. It has two temperature readings, one for the battery and one for the motor. You can see motor's actually kind of warm right now. I just got home from a commute back from work. It has a riding display, so this is if you use your phone as the secondary display for the bike. This is what it's going to look like. It'll show you your pedal assist setting
and your speed, your estimated range, again the trip computer there, and then you have a couple different modes here. This one's really cool, the energy bar, so that shows you when you're either depleting energy from the battery or recharging it using the regenerative braking system. And then I think there's one more, yeah, so you also have your CO2 savings on your current trip, and then the total lifetime of the bike. But if we go into, oh, one last thing on the main page here. So there is a SIM card in the bike which ties into the GPS, so you can see where your bike is in the world. And then if you zoom out, it'll also show you where a service center is. So you can actually get navigation to a service center if it will let me do that. All right, well, we're not going to go too deep into that. It does work, I tested it, but in any case, moving on to the configurations panel, this is where a lot of the customization options come in. So if we look at the sensors option right there, so the pedal sensor adjusts the sensitivity of the torque sensor, and then the brake sensor is related to the regenerative braking itself. Then we also have motor tuning. So this allows you to sort of customize the motor output of mode 2, which is the second pedal assist level. So it allows you to tweak the top speed of that, as well as adjust the torque output, and then agility, which is kind of the responsiveness of that. So moving on, you can either enable or disable that riding display. And then we have the theft protection system. So when you first turn on the bike, it'll be locked. You can have it set to require a pin. You can set an auto lock, depending on what kind of time you're looking at there. And then the smart lock system. So if the bike is on and it's locked and you have the app open on your phone and you walk up to it, then it will automatically unlock there. And that takes, you have a couple distances that you can choose from for that. And there's also a theft mode, so that if your Stromer gets stolen, you can activate this and it will make it unable to be ridden, which is pretty cool. I've noticed that also with the lock function as well, that the motor adds a bunch of resistance to the rear wheel, so it really can't be pedaled. So then you have some basic things like your language, your units, your time format, and then in the user statistics panel, that will show you your total mileage. You can break that down by the ride just for today. So I did a little over 9 miles today, and then you can break that down by week or month, whatever you want. And then you have your personal profile in the last panel with user manual, service booklet, that sort of thing. And that really about wraps it up. Pretty, useful app. So I think we'll call it there, but there's still plenty more to discuss.
So I have a couple small areas of critique that I want to bring up. I liked that I could tune the motor output of mode 2, but it would be great to be able to tweak all 3 of the main settings. And I'd also like to be able to get turn-by-turn navigation to any destination in the app instead of just service centers. And then just something to be aware of, the bike is a lot more manageable with the battery removed, but it is fairly cumbersome if you need to lift it or move it around regularly. Otherwise, this bike rides like a dream. There's a fairly steep learning curve to get the most out of the ST5, and I think figuring out all the settings and functions will definitely keep you busy, but I also think it's really worth the investment. I don't usually have so much time to tweak and customize things, but by the time I was done testing this bike, I felt like I had really made it my own, and that honestly made it a lot harder to put down. So to circle back to my opening question of whether or not this bike is worth 12 grand and actually over 13,000 if it's fully decked out, I'm gonna leave that one up to you. But I will say very seriously that every ride was an awesome experience that I honestly didn't want to end. Looking back at our test sections, comparison was a little more difficult than usual, but the ST5 Pinion knocked it out of the park when it came to range, hill climbing ability, and raw speed. Add in the pinion system, the user interface, the anti-lock brakes, the security system, and all of its added touches, and it really can't get much better. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around everything that's included with this bike. I think it felt great to ride even without all the customizable settings and extra features, but those things pushed it way above and beyond. Bottom line, if you're looking for a premium e-bike that puts a priority on comfort and performance, you don't need to look any further. There's no doubt this bike is expensive, but you do get what you pay for. If you want to take a closer look, there are links to my written review and to the Stromer website down in the video description. But thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this one as much as I did, please make sure to like and subscribe. Let us know what you think of the ST5 Pinion down in the comments section. But that's all for today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Stromer ST5 Pinion.